meeting. Obviously, we're under time constraints, so that's why it's extraordinary. And it is, we only have one item on the agenda today, so I'm picking up, we should be a fairly short meeting, but I'll get Jordan to open with the Karakia.
Whakatake te hau ki te uru, whakatake te hau ki te tonga. E mā kene ke uta, te mā taratara ki tai. E aka ana te aka kura, he o he huka, he hauhu te hei mōhi.
Thank you, Jordan. And I'll hand over to Lizette to give us a bit of an opening. And
Kia ora koutou. Today we have Alejandro and Sarah Knott, who you may recall from previous times presenting. Sarah is a policy advisor in our section and has an environmental planning degree from Waikato University as well. So today we're talking about the plan change in the Hauraki district, and as you'll be aware, under the RMA, district plans must give effect to the RPS, and you'll be well familiar with that process now. What we are very heartened by is that the district councils in our region continue to work proactively with us. So in advance of formal plan change processes, they're coming to see us earlier. And so we're able to have constructive conversations before plan changes occur. In this case also though, that has occurred, but we also still have a couple of things we must submit on to fulfill our obligations. And we need to be careful that we're not setting any precedent by not commenting on things. So in this case, we feel we must still comment. And that's just in a couple of matters in this case to ensure that there's sufficient work done on this plan change. And Sarah has a map of the plan change area, which will just help visually to show the plan change area in question. And with that, if I can hand over to
just prior to that, I'll go back through the paperwork that I missed. So we don't have any apologies. We can move that forward. Formation of the agenda, I'm happy to move. The seconder, thank you, Councillor Hughes. Are there any disclosures of interest for anyone on this subject we have in front of us today? That's a no. And so with that, we have already had our opening, so I'll hand over to you, Sarah. Thank you, to kick us off.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou. We're here to talk you through the submission we've prepared on Hauraki District Council's proposed Plan Change 2 for rezoning and enabling increased density of development across 4 discrete areas of Waihi. The map on screen depicts where these areas are. So the Ford Road site is W2 in the bottom right. Thorn Road site is the small W4 cell in the top left. Bradford Street is W6, roughly in the middle, and the Bradford Street extension is the blue area labelled W7 adjoining that. The proposed changes seek to implement directions signalled in the Hauraki District Growth Strategy, which was prepared back in 2018 with some WRC staff input. Our submission points can be found in the table starting on page 12 of your agenda. They concern Indigenous biodiversity, transport, resilience, and highly productive land. The majority of our points either recommend the provisions be retained as proposed or seek that further assessment is undertaken and included in the Section 32 report for us to be able to confirm that our regional policy statement provisions have been properly considered. For Indigenous biodiversity, we do seek some amendments to the proposed structure plan provisions to ensure that the recommendations made in the ecological report flow through to the provisions for subdivision. We've also included some general comments about stormwater and wastewater consenting, and that's in our introduction on agenda page 10. We didn't actually make any specific submission points on these matters, so we considered it was important to ensure that the submission be misinterpreted as suggesting any particular likelihood of obtaining future regional consent. And yeah, we're happy to take questions through the chair.
Thanks for that, Sarah. Just in future, if staff could just make a note, if we could have this plan when we actually get the agenda, it just would have been more helpful for us just to try and those of us that are familiar with the area just work out where things are, etc. So just help us inform our any questions we have. So if that could be just a note for the future, thank you. So happy to take questions now. I'll pick off just in that point number 4 that you've got that Hauraki District Council adds a new objective around the forward road structure plan to manage adverse effects on Indigenous biodiversity. Do we need to indicate to them what we see as adverse effects?
So in terms of the management of adverse effects, that is a term that's already been well defined by case law on environmental matters, and is both based on the essence of the effects management nature of the RMA, but then is mostly around when you look at the way it was done in the ecological report for it to flow. So it's just making sure that we avoid further loss of some of those ones. And most of it is just through adverse effects by virtue of land use patterns in the area. So that's what we're recommending. So to your question is perhaps not necessary in the submission because the term is very well understood in the planning.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Just a question on page 10 4C, where you're talking about the capacity of the wastewater treatment plant and that it would need to be upgraded if it intends to take on further growth areas. So you're saying that its current capacity is okay for what is proposed here, the growth that's proposed here, but not for additional growth. Am I understanding that?
The further growth areas was these 4 cells. Oh, yeah.
So are we saying that the Waihi wastewater treatment plant does not have current capacity for this growth that is being proposed?
That is what I understood from talking to.
Okay, I'm just wondering if can you
Yes.
sense where my concern might be here?
So through the chair, I guess the interesting situation that we have is if you read the way they phrased it in the structural plan actually kind of makes a provision for some infrastructure to be in place. Now, the issue for us is always that a structural plan can say the infrastructure to be in place, but it's always a matter of degree. So what we've tried to do is we've tried to signal that if you indeed want to increase the capacity, even though your structural plan says that you will do some steps infrastructure wise, some of those steps will mean in reality upgrades because otherwise it might not work. So it's just the nuance of not being able to fully make it into a submission point because of the way the structural plan is made. So it couldn't be that structural plan couldn't be that prescriptive to us to say what exactly it is that you're going to do. It just says you need to do this number of steps to enable that development capacity in terms of structural plans. So we've tried to signal all good. The structural plan kind of has some of the good wording. But what we know in reality is that you're going to likely have to do upgrades. And if you don't do those upgrades, we'll discuss that with you at the consenting stage. So we're trying to.
That's a heads up.
Yeah, so we're trying to keep the two matters separate only because we will deal with it. And if they haven't done it and they think they have fulfilled the structural plan requirements, we'll just say yes or no or do no
Okay.
work.
That can happen with silos. Just looking at that last sentence, though, the Waihi wastewater treatment plant will need to be upgraded if it intends to take on further growth areas. So when I see that sentence, I'm going, okay, so is that further growth beyond what's being proposed? Or is this the further growth we're talking about? To clarify that?
Yeah.
And I guess also the piece that highlights that is the fact that they've had issues already.
Yeah.
And are in non-compliance. So but to Pamela's point, I think that we need that clarity around that wording to make it understood that we're referencing this now, not in the future.
Yeah.
Especially if someone other than the councils reads it.
Yeah, exactly.
But nice to add that clarity. Thanks, Pamela.
Anything? Yes.
Yeah, just to, following up a little bit on your line about biodiversity. The way the wording is in that table there about, and require subdivision within the Bradford Street Waihi structure plan to provide for indigenous biodiversity by A, incorporating mature trees and landscaping into the design and providing setback residential activities. That A is sort of a bit unclear about. So to be sympathetic to the local indigenous biodiversity, the range of species that would be incorporated into the subdivision would be largely native, I would hope. And they would not include a good range of exotic trees that are still planted in subdivision that are invasive of indigenous ecosystems. So I'm just wondering if you can be a bit clearer about what is meant by, how the point A in particular, incorporating mature trees and landscaping. But you can take that a little bit further. Just think about how it might connect to some of our regional policy statements about encouraging indigenous and buffering and supporting existing indigenous biodiversity nearby. Otherwise, you never know what you'll end up being planted. So, for example,
Yeah, not everybody
we're
knows.
still
that.
planting phoenix palms, Chinese windmill palms, all sorts of invasive species that then immediately get into the local reserve and cause lots of extra work for the volunteers who are often doing the hard work to protect the system.
Yes.
I could follow on from that. When we say incorporating mature trees, does that mean that you're planting more mature trees or that you are incorporating existing mature trees into the planting plan of the subdivision? I want to make sure I'm understanding that
Yeah.
wording.
So the incorporating mature trees wording is in the structure plan they've drafted. And I understood it from the reasoning behind it was that it was, if there was a mature tree that was potentially habitat for something, it would be
Okay. Okay, so,
retained.
That's where it comes back to, we haven't read the structure plan, and
yeah,
structure plans are critical in every subdivision. And unless the structure plan is articulating more clearly some of those key principles, that's where it goes astray. That's my main point, actually, the structure plan.
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah.
I was just trying to understand,
Yeah,
because your point
absolutely.
is don't plant invasive species.
Yeah.
But if there is a well-mature tree, we're not advocating for.
Depends. It
Depends
might be an
on the
invasive
tree it is.
species.
Depends on the structure plan.
Yeah, I know it's hard because the details in the structure plans are often not that clear.
So you have clarity around that? Yep.
Might be able to suggest a few things that we've submitted well in the past for the Ruakura plan change area that had similar provisions for
Just stay
indigenous trees. Yes.
Staying consistent's good.
Yeah, good examples. Point them to good
Yeah.
examples. Absolutely.
Mm.
Good point.
That's a while ago. 17.
We always love examples in this
I do.
thing.
Right, any other questions for the staff?
Good submission.
So we will be
Okay.
running with B. Just that we will just have to make sure that that clarity just comes back on those couple of points that we've raised this morning.
The move.
So thank you,
Happy to second.
Councillor Nicol. Thank you, Councillor Story. All those in favour?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. That brings us to the end of our agenda. And Jordan, if I could get you to close with the Karakia, thank you.
Uni here, mai te uru tapanui te wātea kia maama, te nākau, te tinana, te hingarau, arataka ke e rā rongo, e pakari ake ke ronga ke tēnā.
Waihi.
Thank you very much. Meeting closed at 10:15.
Done. 10:15, still not, it hasn't, my 12-minute record.